Okay, today we're going to be speaking from the book of Mark, chapter 5. And we're going to be taking a look at a particular part of chapter 5. And it deals with this. My name is Legion, for we are many. I needed some real dramatic music right there. You know, you know, but I began looking into this lesson, and to be honest with you, you know, I was looking at the definition of the terms, and I thought I was reaching at first, and I was like, am I seeing, am I seeing what I want to see, or is this, actually here? And it's, and it's actually here. It's actually here. It's embedded, but it's here. And what really lent validity to it is my experience with unclean spirit, unclean spirits, or devils, or demons, or whatever you want to call them. In addition to the countless books that I've read on the subject, during the time when I was going through my experience with them. Many of you know that, I had to exorcise unclean spirits from out my mom. And it was a very, very, very pressing time in my life. Very, very, very difficult time for me. But to God be the glory. He delivered her. And before they had said that she would be on psychotropic meds for the rest of her life. They had diagnosed her with bipolar, and said that she would have to take these meds for the rest of her life. She was on no meds, when she passed. She ended up passing of colon cancer, for those that don't know. But she was in her right mind. She was on absolutely no meds, and she was the same mom that me and my siblings grew up with and loved. So the devil is a liar.
That's right.
But everything that I've seen in this lesson actually spoke to what I've experienced and what I've read, the testimonies that I read of other people that experienced the same thing. And so we're going to get into this subject a bit. So let's jump right in. Mark 5, 1 through 3, my first reader, please.
And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains.
Okay, now, this account of this guy over in the Gadarenes, or actually occurs in the other two, in two other Gospels, in Luke and in Mark as well. Now, I'm sorry, in Matthew and in Luke as well. Now, there is a slight difference with the account in Matthew, and that is, it speaks of two, of there being two, but the other accounts in Luke and Mark only speaks of it being one individual. Some think that, it's because he actually cast out, cast out devils in two people in that land. And the story is told in an earlier part of Mark. And maybe that's what Matthew was alluding to from the number 2. But this particular incident that's entailed, the other two accounts only attribute to one individual. Okay, so we see, first of all, that He was in the country of the Gadarenes. Gadarenes, mean a reward at the end. But more importantly, it was really a pagan part of the country. It was, it was where the Gentiles lived, and it was considered to be quite pagan in all actuality. And it speaks of when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs. So here it is, we have a man with an unclean spirit, and he lives among the tombs. Okay? And if we look in Luke 8:27, in their account, it says, and when he had went forth to land, there met him out of the city a certain man which had devils long time, and wear no clothes, neither abode in any house, but in tombs. So we see he wasn't just coming out of the tombs, he was actually living in the tombs. And when he came out, he was actually naked. He wore no clothes. Now that doesn't, I don't know if that means but booty naked, or he just had a loincloth or something on, which they would have still considered naked. But the point being, he was unclothed. Okay? And Matthew 8:28 tells us a little bit something else, and you see how we have to put all the accounts together to get the whole story. Matthew 8:28 says, and when he was come to the other side into the country of the Gergesenes. Now, the Gergesenes, actually speaks to the same place, but it speaks to it in a different form. One speaks to like the city, another kind of like the state, so to speak. So it says there met him two possessed with devils coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce. Now this, what's meant by these words, exceeding fierce, is that he was very dangerous. That fierce, means he was very difficult or dangerous to go past. And it says, so that no man might pass by that way, So now we see more of a fuller picture of this individual. He was a man with an unclean spirit. And take note that Mark 5 says he has an unclean spirit, and in Luke and Matthew it says that he was possessed with devils, and he had them for a long time. So again, with putting all the accounts together, we get the full story. So we're dealing with a person who lived in the tombs, and tombs speaks to graves. That's where they buried their bodies. So here it is, and it was believed, that unclean spirits hung out at graveyards, or in the tombs, or where the dead, lie, and which only makes sense, right? But this is where the devils had him living. And we're gonna take a look at the spiritual significance of these words, and what it means, what it's saying in the background of these words, because I think they're very relevant to, not only ourselves, but our loved ones, whoever may be, dealing with such a situation. I don't know how many of you actually believe in unclean spirits or not, but, let me assure you, they are real. They are real. It's not just a fairy tale. It's not just something that's in here for no reason. They're real. Okay, so here it is. Let's take another look at the whole account. We're dealing with a man has an unclean spirit or devil, or unclean spirits, because there's more than one, or devils. He's dwelling in tombs. He had them for a long time. He has no clothes. He wears no clothes, and neither do he abode in any house, but in tombs. Okay, and he's exceeding fierce. He's exceeding fierce. That means he's a very difficult person to deal with, and people don't even want to go past him because he's dangerous. All right, now let's look behind some of these words. We have the word spirit, as in unclean spirit. Unclean pretty much means unclean, but spirit is pneuma, number 4151. It speaks to a spirit, but when we go deeper, it speaks to the disposition or influence which fills and governs the soul of anyone. So, what we're talking about when we say that this guy had these unclean spirits, or he had these devils, he had a disposition or he had an influence within him which filled and governed his soul. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It also speaks to the efficient source or power, affection, emotion, or desire. So it's also speaking of a spirit as the source or power or affection or emotion or desire. You ever heard of someone say someone had a lust spirit?
Yeah.
You know, so that lust spirit will be the source of that lust. You know, or a spirit of anger will be the source of that emotion. You know, or the spirit of greed will be the source for that desire. Or a spirit that's giving someone great strength, you know, and to be difficult, you know, that people can't even pass, will be the source of that power. So, you know, can you see this? Now it comes a little, you know, spirit, you know, kind of sound kind of esoteric, you know, but this brings it a little closer to home. Now, devils, you know, because they're speaking about the same thing, you know. Now, devils, the Greek word is demonion, number 1140, speaks to a demonic being, you know. Now, this is the interesting part that I found. It was from dio, you know, the roots from dio, meaning to distribute fortunes. You know, and that's really, really relevant. I found that to be, you know, amazingly relevant. You know, especially when you consider, you know, all the talk that we hear about the stars, the entertainers, you know, even the athletes, you know, making deals with the devil, you know, that they might, you know, get fortunes, fame and fortune. You know, the very root of the word demon means to distribute fortunes, because they were the ones that people went to get their fortunes. And so we see the same thing taking place now today. I thought that was pretty amazing that was actually in there, you know. Now, it also told us that he didn't abode in a house. He didn't abide in a house, okay? His abode was in no house, but in tombs, right? Now, the word house is okia, and it's number 3614. It speaks to a residence, an abode, a family. You know, and see, this is what these unclean spirits, these demons will do. They will seek to get you away from your residence. That is, they'll seek to get you away from your abode or your family. See, these unclean spirits, they will try to drive you away from your family and friends, away from your residence, from where you reside. See, and you'll be a busybody, you know, never wanting to stay anywhere, to reside anywhere for any length of time. You know, Mark 5:4-5 says, because that he had been often bound with fetters and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. Okay. Now, fetters speak to shackles for the feet. And the chains actually spoke to a manacle or shackles for the hands. You know, so they were capturing him and they were chaining him because he was so dangerous and he was so difficult to deal with. You know, and they were putting fetters and chains on him. But it says he plucked them asunder. You know, and he broke the fetters in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. See, and when one is possessed by an unclean spirit or a demon, you know, whatever, if it's a spirit that's bringing about an emotion, they will not be able to control that emotion, and neither will anyone else around them be able to control that emotion that's in them. You know, if it's a spirit of anger, then no one, not only the individual, but no one around them will be able to tame that anger that's in them. Same thing with with lust. The same thing with envy. The same thing with whatever it may be. You know, if the source of it is an unclean spirit, then no one will be able to tame it. And this is why you see people doing things that they don't want to do, but yet they find themselves doing them anyway. Luke 8:29 says, "For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for oftentimes it had caught him, and he was kept bound with chains and fetters." You know, when I looked more closely at that, a better translation would have been, "For oftentimes, you know, they caught him, and they bound him with chains and fetters. And he brake the bands, and was driven of the devil into the wilderness." Now this was Yawsome right here. But when I took a look at this word wilderness, it was eremos in the Greek, and it's number 2048, and it means solitary, lonely, desolate. You know, and this is what those unclean spirits will do. They'll try to drive you from your abode, from your residence, from your family and friends, to a place of loneliness, to a place that's solitary, that's cut off from everyone that knows and loves you. You know, they will drive you into a type of wilderness, into a type of solitary existence or lonely existence that they can have their way with. And we read in Mark 5, it says that he was in the mountains and in the tombs, day and night, always, night and day. He was in the mountains and in the tombs, cutting himself with stones, crying and cutting himself with stones. And I found some very interesting things, you know, when I looked up these words. You know, this is, okay, so this is teaching us, it's telling us where the unclean spirits want to be. They want to be in the wilderness first and foremost. They want to be, you know, they want you all to themselves. So they want to get you solitary. They want to keep you lonely. You know, but also they want to be in the mountains. You know, and they want you to live in the tombs. So when we look at the word mountain, it's oros in the Greek, number 3735. It means to rise or to rear. You know, now they want you to rise or rear in the tombs, or rise or be reared in the tombs. You know, and what does the tombs mean? Tombs in the Greek is memna, yeah. Menema, yeah, okay. Tombs is menema, number 3418. It means a memorial. So if you take a good look at this, you know, where he was dwelling was in a lonely place, you know, that wanted to continue to rise a memorial within him, or to rear, which means to raise up a memorial. Memorial is something that's past. It's something that you remember. You know, so this is a spiritual picture of them wanting to keep bringing up your past, keep rising up your past, you know, to you. Raising you up in your past so that you can't live in the present and go on into the future. You know, and this is a part of the way that they keep control over you. They use your past against you. You know, and the word cutting, because they want you to be crying and cutting yourself too. You know, and cutting is kapto, number 2629. It comes from kata, number 2596, meaning down, and kapto, meaning to chop. It specifically means to beat the breast in grief. So I pray that you can see that the unclean spirits wants you in a solitary place. They want to rise. They want to keep rising up within you, the past, or they want to raise you up in the past, depending on how early they get to you. They want to raise you up in the past or continue to rise the past up in you so that you can keep beating yourself down in grief. That's powerful.
Yeah, it is.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. See, because I've seen this at work. You know, I've seen this at work, up close and personal. This is, you know, this is just amazing that this is in here, that this is actually in here. It's actually in here, you know, because this is, you know, I can bear witness that this is how unclean spirits work. Let me have my next reader read Mark 5, 6 through 10, please.
But when he saw Yeshua afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with thee, Yeshua, thou Son of the Most High Elohim? I adjure thee by Elohim that thou torment me not. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he sought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. And they besought him that he would not command them to go out into the deep.
Okay. So, when the unclean spirit of the devil, when it seen Yahushua, it ran and worshipped him. You know, and I got news for you. When it see Yahushua today, it'll still run and worship him. To worship him, it speaks to submitting to him. You know, and when it see Yahushua, it still will submit to Yahushua, to the name of Yahushua. You have to understand that. But when I say the name of Yahushua, I'm not speaking about a phonetic sound. You know, and what I'm speaking about is a character.
Hallelujah.
You know, it will still submit to the character of Yahushua. It will still submit to the reputation of Yahushua. And it still will submit to the authority of Yahushua.
Hallelujah.
And if you entail those things in conjunction with the audible sound, it'll submit to you. Now, the next part is extremely important in spiritual warfare, especially. It says, and he cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with thee, Yahushua, thou Son of the Most High El? I adjure thee by Elohim, that thou torment me not. See, he recognized that he was the Son of the Most High El, even as we're called to be the sons of the Most High El. See, and it was often in the ancient times. It was often when folks was trying to cast spirits out, or they was trying to deal with a spiritual being, they would often invoke a spiritual being that was higher in rank or authority than the one that they were trying to cast out. See, and this is why the Spirit is saying, I adjure you. This is why he's saying, I adjure you by Elohim. You know, because there is none higher than him, and Yahushua was right up under him.
That's right.
You know, so the only highest authority that he could go was Elohim himself, his father. You know, and he was praying that he would torment him not. So this is crucial because, you know, if you have an unclean spirit, you know, you want to know how to torment them.
That's right, yeah.
You know, right? You know, because they're constantly trying to torment us, right? You know, so it would be good if we were spiritual warriors, that we knew how to torment our enemy, you know, rather than have them just torment us all the time. Amen? You know, so when I looked up this word torment, it came from Bazanizo, numbers 928, meaning to torture, from Basanos, number 931, which came from Bino, which meant to walk. Yeah. I was like, wow, really? To walk. But it's not just to walk, but it's to walk in the sense of going down to the bottom. You know, it's to walk in the sense of going to the bottom. And that's going to make more sense shortly. You know, well, you know what come out of the bottom anyway. But anyway, we're going to come back to that. We see in verse 8, it says that Yahushua said, "Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit." You know, and he asked him, "What is thy name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Yeah, I needed some more of that music right there. You know, but this is real. This is huge. You know, because this lets us know just how bad this thing can get.
Yeah.
You know, because I think this is the worst that it can get. You know, a legion in the Roman army was 3,000 to 6,000 infantry troops plus 100 to 200 cavalry troops. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot. I didn't say 3,000 to 600, 3,000 to 6,000 infantry troops and 100 to 200 cavalry troops. Now, infantry troops were those that was on the ground. They was pretty much stationary. But the cavalry troops spoke to those who were highly mobile. So they came and went. You know, they wasn't, you know, they came and went as they pleased. Maybe they go and check on some other infantries, you know, or help some other infantries when they're in need. You know, when they need help. You know how you watch the old army pictures, and when the infantry troops are in help, they're waiting for the cavalry to come and save the day. You know, when I was doing this, I couldn't help but to reflect back on the time when I was trying to cast out spirits out of my mom, and you know, in reflecting back, I can see when the cavalry came. You know, I could see the times when I was winning, but then all of a sudden it's like, you know, they got strength from somewhere, and I start thinking, man, that was the cavalry. Now, I don't think that my mom had 6,000 unclean spirits in her, but there was definitely more than a couple. You know, but point being, it can be as many as this. You know, that's huge. You know, and so verse 10 is also very important because it tells us that, you know, that the individual with the spirits, with the demons, besought him much. You know, they was begging him that he would not send them away out of the country. They didn't want to go out of the country. So we need to know every aspect of sending them out of the country and what that speaks to, right? Because, you know, that's another thing they don't want to do. So we want them to do that.
That's right.
That's exactly what we want them to do. You know? Now, when we look at the account in Luke 8:31, it says, "And they besought him that he would not command them to go out into the deep." So not only did they not want to go out of the country, they didn't want to go into the deep either. So what we're to learn from this is that the unclean spirit, the spirits that is the devils, you know, that they don't want to go out of the country, and they don't want to go into the deep. So we want to get them out of the country and into the deep.
That's right.
Amen?
Amen.
You know, now when we look up this word country, it's Korah in the Greek, number 5561. It comes from Kao, meaning to gate or yawn. I almost passed out when I seen this one. And the word deep is abusos, number 12 in the Greek, meaning deathless. Oh my goodness. You know, I don't know if you have eyes to see yet, you know, but spiritually speaking, you know, for anyone who have had experience with unclean spirits or devils or casting them out, you know, one of the things that everyone attests to is that they come out through the mouth. They come out through the mouth. And Korah comes from kaio, which means to gape, or yawn, which means to open the mouth wide. And they're asking them, don't send us out. You know, this is exactly the way they come out, is through the wide opening of the mouth. Sometimes yelling, sometimes just yawning, sometimes coughing, sometimes vomiting. You know, sometimes sneezing rather.
Crying?
You know, I don't know about the crying. But, and then we have where they don't want to go, the deep, abusos, number 12, meaning deathless. This is the very same word found throughout Revelation as the bottomless pit. They don't want to go to the bottomless pit. So where are we going to send them? To the bottomless pit. Amen. Absolutely. They don't want for the person to open up wide so that they can have to come out. So we're going to get people to open up wide so that they can come out. You know, and it's just so amazing, because every book that I read said the same thing about the way they come out. You know, that just blew me away. You know, and especially when I seen, you know, abusos, because I'm thinking it's talking about the water that was nearby, you know, the deep. You know, that's what I'm thinking it's talking about. You know, but then I found out that, you know, this is the very same word that's used for bottomless pit, you know, all through the New Testament.
Wow.
I can see why they don't want to go there. You know, but they getting a one-way ticket from me. You know, let me have my next read verses 11 through 15.
Now there was there nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Yahushua gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine. And the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000, and were choked in the sea. And they that fed the swine fled, and told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that was done. And they came to Yahushua, and see him that was possessed with the devil, and had the legion, sitting and clothed, and in his right mind, and they were afraid.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. How you hear that, devil? Be afraid. Very afraid. So we see here in verse 12 that the devil spoke to him, saying, send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And then we're told in verse 13, it says, and forthwith Yahushua gave them leave. Now let's stop right there for a minute, because, you know, we need to learn, you know, what's being taught here. First and foremost, he sent them into the swine. Why would he allow for them to go into the swine? You know, because they were unclean spirits, and the swine are unclean. So what is that telling us? It's telling us that they can only, but, you know, I believe that they can only reside in an unclean place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They didn't ask to go someplace where they knew they weren't allowed to go.
That's right.
They asked to go into the swine, and Yahushua allowed them into the swine. And there was a lot of swine.
Yeah.
And it says the swine ran violently down a deep place into the sea. And there were about 2,000 of them. That's a lot of swine. And they were choked in the sea. You know, now the thing is, spiritually speaking, those demons, those devils, those unclean spirits, they're still residing in the swine. They're still in the unclean. See, and this is why, folks say that, hey, the law is done away with, you don't need Torah. Torah teaches you how to be clean and holy. If you're clean, then an unclean spirit can't dwell in some place that's clean. Not if it's truly clean.
Yeah.
Scripturally speaking. This is why we know this, because this is why Balaam couldn't curse Israel. Because they were clean. They were Kodesh. They were holy and clean. So we're learning something here about our enemy. Now imagine those who actually eat swine.
Eating them demons.
Let me get now one of them demon chops. How about some demonic ham? Beastly bacon. Yeah, but there's a lot of wisdom in that.
That's right.
Now I believe it was way more spirits than it were swine. But then the swine, they didn't even want to live with the spirits. They didn't even want to live with the spirits. They run into the sea. And they drown. See, because the spirits, they really can only dwell with those who are dead. They can really, and see, and this is what Yahshua is teaching us in this. They really can only be where the dead are. This is what the Messiah was talking about when he said, let the dead bury the dead. See, just because you're walking and talking don't mean you're alive.
That's right.
You can still be walking and talking and still be dead as a doorknob. Kind of like a fish out the water, flapping around, but good as dead. See, and that's real important to understand, see, because, the unclean spirits, they can't dwell in a clean temple where there's life. Now, when we go to verse 15, let's speak about they ran into the sea. Spiritually speaking, the sea speaks to the nations and the multitudes and the peoples. They're still in the sea. They're still in the nations, the multitudes and the people. They are now today for sure. Yahshua was cleaning house, while he was there. But we'll get to that in a minute. But it says, in verse 15, it says, and they come to Yahushua and see him that was possessed with the devil and had the legion sitting. Okay, now he's sitting. And clothed. Now he's clothed. And in his right mind. And they were afraid. Now Luke 8:35 gives us a little more to the story. It says, then they went out to see what was done and came to Yahushua and found the man out of whom the devils were departed, sitting at the feet of Yahushua, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Now what does it mean by sitting? And this was very interesting as well. The word sitting is kathemai, number 25:21, meaning to sit down, to reside, to remain. If you recall from when we started, he dwelt in a place, he didn't dwell in any house, and the house meant to reside. Now we see him residing, where before he couldn't reside in a house. He wasn't residing in a house. Now we see him residing all of a sudden. So, and if you ever seen someone with with an unclean spirit, you know, they're very, very antsy, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they oftentimes can't reside. Not for long, anyhow. You know, and you know, we had that problem with my mom. You know, we looked up and interesting story. Well, I'm not gonna go there, but anyway, we looked up and she would be all over the place. We got to hunt her down. You know, she been, I mean, all the way across town. Just, I mean, places she never even went. You know, but point being, they don't want to reside. You know, and what does it mean by being in their right mind? Well, in the Greek, it's sophronio, number 4993. And it means of sound mind. It comes from sophron, meaning self-controlled. Now remember, when we was going through what the unclean spirits wanted to do and where they wanted you to dwell, which was in tombs, which is an unclean place, which is the abode of the dead. You know, they don't want you to be with those who have life. They want you to be with those who are dead. You know, alone, living in the past. You know, they want to control you. You know, and that's what they do. Remember the definition of demon? Definition of spirit. You know, where it spoke of that power. You know, that power that was over the individual. Now we see he has self-control again. So he's not being controlled by someone or something else. He's self-controlled again. You know, huge. Huge. It's a terrible thing when you find yourself doing things that you don't want to do. Even in the midst of doing them, you acknowledging you don't want to do them. But you can't stop. That's a horrible thing. You know, I experienced that myself, you know, when, you know, with gambling. You know, I would tell myself, you know, I wake up in the middle of the night, it'd be like 3:30, 4 in the morning, and you know, and you know, I could hear something speaking to my heart saying, you know, hey, you woke now, might as well go to the casino. And I can remember thinking to myself, you got to be crazy. It's 3:30, 4 in the morning. I ain't going nowhere. Next thing I know, I'm pulling up at the casino. I'm telling you. I didn't realize it was a spirit at the time, but it was. For any time that you're doing something that you don't want to do, you're not in control. Someone or something other than you is controlling you. And the best thing for you to do is to acknowledge it first and foremost and get some help. You know, very real deal, very real thing. So my man has control again. He's has self-control. Let me have my next reader read verses 16 through 20.
And they that saw it told them how it befell him that he that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him to depart out of their coasts. And when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit Yeshua suffered him not, but said unto him, Go home to thy friends and tell them how great things that Adonai hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee.
And verse 20, please.
Oh, okay. And he departed and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Yeshua had done for him, and all men did marvel.
Hallelujah. Now, as I said, this region was very pagan, and dude was most likely a Gentile. He was most likely a Gentile himself, you know, and I believe this is why Yahushua suffered him not, you know, to accompany him. You know, now let us take note that the people came and they prayed him to depart out of their coast. That's clear to see. You know, this 2,000 swine you just killed, bro. You know, that was, you know, that was how we made our living. You know, now here it is. You done killed all our swine. We got a problem. You gotta go. You know, you know, God forgive them for they knew not what they did. You know, but you know, we have the individual that was demon possessed, asking, you know, could he hang with Yahshua and the disciples, and he tells them, go home to thy friends, and this passage, go home to thy friends, literally speaks to go into thy own house, family and friends. Remember, he wasn't residing in a house before. You know, he couldn't reside nowhere, you know, but you know, now that he was sitting, you know, and I forgot to touch on where he was sitting. He was sitting at the feet of Yahushua, you know, which speaks to him residing in the walk of Yahushua, because the feet speak to the walk, you know, and so this is why he was okay and he was able to reside, and he became self-controlled again. You know, but back to verse 19, you know, Yahushua was telling him to go into thine own house, family and friends, you know, and publish, you know, these great things that the Most High had done for him. And I think that's one of another key to helping someone, you know, in this type of situation, someone that has unclean spirits, is their own household, their own family and friends. You know, one of the things I'll never forget that my mom told me when she was when she had actually came back to herself. She was like, you know, the key is love. She said, you know, whenever I was shown love, you know, I get my most strength. You know, that's the key. You know, and that's why, you know, they try to take you away from your family and friends, so that you don't have anyone to show you that love. That's why they try to get you alone and get you to be lonely, so that they can get you to dwell on the past, keep bringing up the past and raising you up in the past, so that you can establish yourself in the present and walk into life in the future. You know, so I thought this was really relevant too, you know, and when you go through scripture, it speaks of how some descriptions of some demons, you know, that in case you didn't know, you know, they have a will. They do have a will, you know, they have emotions, you know, scriptures that evidence them having a will is, you know, we read in Mark today and also in Matthew 12:44, they have emotions, you know, they have knowledge. You know, and some people, that's the whole reason that they get with them, is because, you know, they want their knowledge. They have self-awareness. They know who they are and they know who you are. And they also know who you aren't. Selah. And they do have the ability to speak. You know, so some things to know. And before we leave this subject, I want to remind you of what Yahushua taught in Matthew 12, verses 43 through 45. He says, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out. And when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept and garnished, and he goeth he and taketh with himself 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of the man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be also unto this wicked generation. And what Yahushua was speaking to here is that while he was here, during his ministry, he went through the land and he cast out the spirits. You know, this house he's speaking of is the house of Yahudah, that he went through and cast out the spirits. You know, and they're going to come back in the last days. And it's going to be 7 times worse. No doubt about us being in the last days. You know, the house of Yahudah don't just speak to that land over there. It speaks to the praisers of Yahuwah, for that's what the word means. You know, then again, maybe it speaks to the house of Israel. Because Yahushua said he was sent not but only to the house of Israel, and he sent his apostles to Israel. So I retract that statement. You know, speaks to the house of Israel. He had cast the spirits out. You know, but when they come back, if they find it empty, they don't find the Ruach HaKodesh in there. Those people who they find it empty, they're going to be in trouble. You know, and we know Revelation speaks of the bottomless pit being open, and Apollyon, the king of the locust army, is going to come forth and they're going to do their thing. It's going to be 7 times worse. Actually, Scripture teaches that it'll be the worst time in the history of the planet. So something to just take into account. That's all I have for you today.
Can I have that?
Pray with a blessing.
Yeah.